Welcome back. We're going to pick up from where we left off the last time. When I set out to write this book, the endeavor seemed impossible at the time. Writing the first chapter seemed to be a Herculean task. It was difficult to write even the first sentence. Then I began to think about what would motivate people to pursue higher ideals. Then my mind began to direct me in a revelatory way to the topics people would need to understand in order to succeed. First, an understanding of the power of the mind and its inner workings, the indispensable role of thought in success achievement, as well as belief in oneself. From there on, identifying the relevant topics to discuss became easy. But above all else, I had to convince myself that the task was doable. I had to believe that I was up to the task. And it is this attitude of belief that is carrying me through writing this book, which I incidentally believe will offer a beneficial idea or two. Now, let's talk about another strategy. Dreaming big, an attitude of dreaming big. Setting big goals is a winning attitude. Just setting big goals. Because it takes guts for you to set goals. But it brings results that you can be proud of. Big goals get one excited about how and what life would be once the destination is reached. Get you excited, goosebumps. And once the goal is achieved. Dreaming big also spurs you to think big. In the end, thinking and dreaming big have the tendency to yield phenomenal results. Once again, about writing this book. Very few things excite me about this at this moment than writing this book. I've told every friend that I know about this book. I've given them reasons for getting a copy of the book once, or the audio version once it comes out. But I've also given them a reason to hold me accountable. So now the pressure is on me. In a sense, this book and the success principles within it are a big deal to me. Writing a motivational book stirs my soul about one day becoming a New York Times bestseller, even though that realization may be far-fetched. The truth, though, is it is what each of us should aspire to do, should aspire toward, to dream big, that one day we'll be able to reach the pinnacle of what we dream of. Pamela Voigt-Starr once said, "Reach high, for stars lie hidden in your soul. Dream deep, for every dream precedes the goal." She is so very true. There's fun and excitement in achievement. In your case, your goal might be to be a chef, but more importantly, to be the best one in the industry. I have a friend that's passionate about animals. She works at an animal shelter. We often have great conversations surrounding animals and their well-being. From her reaction, you can tell how personally rewarding it is for her. She's always happy and excited when we get to talking about the animals and the animal shelter. Now, let me pivot a little bit to Chef Jose Andre, who's a Spanish chef who founded the World Central Kitchen. WCK, which is a nonprofit organization which is aimed to provide meals to victims of natural disasters. Wall Central Kitchen, Chef Andres explained, and I quote, started with a simple idea at home with my wife, Patricia. When people are hungry, send in cooks. Not tomorrow, today. Everyone knows that food is central to life and family. And family all over the world. What we learned very quickly was that food is even more essential in a crisis, he said. But the thing of it is, from an early age, Chef Andrews has always wanted to be a cook, a good one. His aspirations were big. He early in life inculcated an attitude of mind of wanting to accomplish big things that will have positive effect, profound effects on many people. He chose to be a chef as early as age 15. In preparing for his lifelong aspiration, Chef Andres developed an attitude of dreaming big and enrolled at the School of Restaurants and Hotels of Barcelona and trained in Michelin-starred restaurants, including El Bulli. Since being a chef is Chef Andres' life's desire, he developed the attitude of dreaming big and to make every effort to be the best at it. He wanted to affect as many people around the world as his imagination could carry him. Now, the Reverend Martin Luther King once remarked that if a man is called to be a street sweeper, he should sweep the streets, even as Michelangelo painted, or Beethoven composed music, or Shakespeare wrote poetry. He should sweep streets so well that all the hosts of heaven and earth would pause to say, here lived a great street sweeper who did his job well. Chef Andres has certainly answered Dr. King's call to be the best he could be in his profession. And indeed, Chef Andres has been able to do just that. He's prepared and served meals to over 60 million people thus far. The earthquake of 2010 in Haiti was the kitchen's initial run at providing meals to disaster-affected areas. Since then, the Wall Central Kitchen, under the leadership of its founder, Chef Andres, has been to places like Puerto Rico, Texas, Southern California, Louisiana, and now Ukraine, where the Wall Central Kitchen and local restaurant partners are currently feeding the people of Ukraine who are fending off an unprovoked war with Russia. The point of sharing Chef Andres' remarkable story, is to emphasize the possibilities that can be realized when one develops an attitude of dreaming big. I'm sure that Chef Andres did not know early in his life how his dreams would affect people around the world. He did not know how to be famous. He did not know he would be famous for doing good for humanity the way he has become. However, he believed, and with that came the confidence to reach higher heights. In essence, Chef Andre believed at the core that food relief is not just a meal that keeps hungry people away. It is a plate of hope. it tells you in your darkest hours that someone, somewhere, cares about you. It is that belief which others may have thought was grandiose, unachievable, that makes it all possible to succeed in what he has done. And today, the chef is celebrated around the world for the lives he is saving by simply feeding those who are destitute and in need. It all began with a dream, a big dream. Now, it's your turn to foster an attitude of dreaming big. Big dreams coupled with healthy attitude of success seldom disappoint. Small dreams are almost always achievable. You want to go to the grocery store? Yes, you can. Do you have a goal to buy a pair of new shoes? Yes, you can. Now, I dare you want to go to the moon. Is going to the moon a dream achievable? Of course it is. But you will never know how far you can get until you try. The poet T.S. Eliot once remarked that only those who will risk going too far can possibly find out how far one can go. I am sure that you have a goal which might not be to go to the moon. Nevertheless, you do have one. Would you not want to find out how far you can go with this goal? No. You keep playing it safe and making excuses. Let me remind you that procrastination and making excuses are dream killers. They rob your happiness. John Shedd reminds us that a ship is safe in harbor. But that's not what ships are for. You have to you have been endowed with great ideas. Put them to the test. Don't wait. Time will never be just right. In the words of Eddie Rickenbacker, courage is doing what you're afraid to do. There can be no courage unless you are scared. To me, going outside the bounds of academia for employment was a risk worth taking. And T.S. Eliot, the American-born winner of the Nobel Prize in Literature, obviously an acclaimed poet, literary critic, and a dramatist, an editor, and a publisher, he once wrote that only those who will risk going too far can possibly find out how far one can go. At the time I chose to go into the world of business to find out how far my intellect and ingenuity could take me. That to me truly exemplified courage. I could have easily stayed in higher ed, in academia, which is safe and played safe, but rather I move out to do something that I relish, something that I really would like to be or do. That is helping other people, and I'm happy about that. President Abraham Lincoln was also a leader who exemplified courage during his time as President of the United States of America. As the 16th President of the United States, his Emancipation Proclamation was a giant and courageous step to free slaves who were under the control of Confederate states. Even though his main objective, he declared, was to save the Union rather than free slaves, he hoisted the issue in many people's eyes as the main reason for going to war with the South. That, to me, was courageous. It took courage to defend a seemingly helpless segment of people, of the nation. It also took courage by President Lincoln to go to war with a significant portion of the population over the issue that Confederate States believed would derail their economic way of life. I mean, you're talking about 11 states. That's quite significant. And furthermore, it took courage for Lincoln to fight his own race, his own folks, his own people, on the moral grounds that all men were created equal and that no one should be a slave to another human being. In fact, Lincoln's moral belief and conviction was that those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves, he said. And again, therein lies one of the main character traits of a courageous person: belief. Strong belief in himself and about what was possible. What I would like to impress upon you at this moment is that as you go about setting important goals in your daily life, you believe at the core in the achievement of such goals, the achievement of such enterprise. Understand that belief is what fuels courage. In President Lincoln's case, he believed that it was his moral duty to save the Union. And I need to make this distinction, this clarification, that Lincoln's primary objective for going to war with Confederate States was to save the Union rather than to free slaves, as some might want you to believe. However, to do so, he would have to find a way, he'd have to find a way to weaken the 11 Confederate States, particularly their armies. And the one most effective way, the conduit, the one most effective way he could do so was by a declaration to free slaves in those states. Therefore, people should understand that freeing slaves was an ancillary step, not a primary objective Lincoln was willing to take in order to save a fractured nation. But nevertheless, the Emancipation Proclamation, which declared slaves to be freed beginning January 1st, 1863, was a giant and a courageous step, courageous option, one which would deny participating states the free slave labor which fueled their economies. Lincoln's strong moral conviction that it was wrong to enslave another human being, coupled with the belief that he could prevail over the Confederate Army, was enough to catapult him to the next attitude of courage, which is being fearless. And people who are courageous are usually ones for whom the fear of failing is not an option, is not an issue. They're aware that fear exists, but they also know how to manage it. In fact, Lincoln is said to have been the lone president to have come under fire. In his case, one strategy he took to manage his fear was to take action that would weaken the Confederate States. He strengthened the Union's military and allowed free slaves to join as well. In addition, Lincoln applied effective military tactics and maneuvers and decimated Confederate States economies by freeing slaves who provided labor to the bountiful cotton, tobacco, and rice farming sectors of states, those states' economies. And now, as for you, the habit of setting touch and go goals must stop. Set a goal today, you abandon it tomorrow. You have an excuse as to why. You're just avoiding it. You cannot keep setting goals and not believing in their attainment. Keep in mind that serious goals, important goals, will challenge every fiber of your being. For that reason, you must believe in yourself and about their attainment. Quitting should not be, it should be your last option. Should not be your primary or your first option. You cannot exercise that if you're pursuing meaningful goals. Now, that brings me to the next attitude that you must engender in order to become bold and courageous. And that is that of perseverance. A courageous individual is one who perseveres, even in the face of adversity. It is evident from my earlier definition of courage that fear and sometimes serious personal threats can be prerequisites to courage. However, when someone perseveres, he or she persists to the point of being stubbornly impervious to external advice, especially one that is intended to dissuade you from taking action on the course whose outcome you so fervently believe in. So let me share an example to make a point. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. He was an African-American Baptist minister and perhaps the most prominent activist in the American civil rights movement from 1955 until his assassination on April 4, 1968. Dr. King persisted to improve the condition of the African American in America. He perseveres, he persisted. Dr. King's persistence to improve the condition of the African American in America was of the utmost. He paid the ultimate price, his life. However, in fighting for the civil rights of African Americans, Dr. King became a model of courage, even when he knew danger was imminent. He was arrested many times and eventually jailed for what was deemed as breaking segregation laws of that era. Even during one of his arrests, Dr. King persisted in fighting for justice for his people. His letter from Birmingham jail to his fellow clergymen asking people to disobey what he called unjust segregation ordinances exemplified true moral courage. The key, though, is that Dr. King never relented. He never gave up. He never gave in. He defied authority and broke segregation laws whenever and wherever the opportunity availed itself. For instance, on April 12, 1963, Dr. King and at least 55 others, most of whom were black, were jailed for parading without a permit during a peaceful march against segregation in Birmingham, Alabama. And in Chicago, Dr. King showed persistence as well. His message on July 10, 1966, to tens of thousands of supporters at Soldier Field was also a sign of steadfastness in his pursuit of a just America for African Americans. There, he urged people to peacefully protest and vowed to fill, and I quote, fill up the jails of Chicago, if necessary, in order to end the slums. In the end, Dr. King's persistence convinced the minds of many Americans about the harmful effects of segregation. His efforts paid off. He convinced many Americans, black and white alike, to join him. In the end, he succeeded in making America change the laws which denigrated, brutalized, and dehumanized African Americans for centuries. Today, there are visible signs that the nation has achieved some modicum of racial integration. Next on the road to developing a courageous attitude is a habit of self-discipline. Self-discipline is what gives you what I call the grounding effect. It is what keeps your feet grounded, your feet grounded to the ground. It enables you, self-discipline enables you to do what you're supposed to do in staying from distraction. You got to stay from distraction. Self-discipline will help you do that. Self-discipline is what wakes you up on time in order to report to work at 8 a.m. Monday morning. On one hand, when you have mastered the art of self-discipline, it becomes easy to be tenacious and courageous when you encounter challenging situations or people. On the other hand, people who lack self-discipline do not possess the ability to control the way they work or behave, especially in trying to achieve worthy goals. My advice, though, is that you avoid the habit of not having clearly defined goals and taking advice from people who are least likely to move you in the direction of achieving your goals. Finally, the willingness to take risks. Let me start by stating a truism that risk-averse people make progress in life. And when they do, progress comes at a snail's pace. They're usually circumspective about anything that comes close to challenging them. On the contrary, courageous individuals have always been willing to take risks, calculated ones. In fact, it is through taking risks that successful people often become courageous. Therefore, my advice is that you carefully evaluate the opportunities that come your way. In the end, though, choose one that's likely to bring success in the area that you've chosen. It's likely to bring success for you. Remember that saying that there has never been a moment. Remember the saying that there's never been a monument erected on behalf of someone who never accomplished anything in their life. Take risks. Do something that is worthy of remembrance. Finally, remember the saying that there has never been a monument erected on behalf of someone who's never accomplished anything in their life. Take risks. Take risks. Do something that is worthy of remembrance. Now remember, the rest of the strategies as to how you can develop your attitude can be found in the book. And again, the title is Unlock Your Possibilities. And until my next summary, I thank you for watching and listening. If you have any comments, please send me, and do not forget to give me a like and to share this message. Share this summary with your friends. And other than that, I'll see you in my next summary. Thanks again.